Hi everyone, good evening. Welcome to Inclusive Product Week. My name is Bree from Code for San Jose, and I'll be responsible for hosting today's session. We'll take Q&A questions after the presentation, so feel free to submit them in the Q&A tab. I'm glad to welcome Yina Smith-Danenhower, who will present the UX of Conversational Design. Yina is a conversational product designer at XAPP Media, an AWS partner with machine learning competency status. At AXPP, Yina leads their patented optimal conversation TM framework, focusing on improving and documenting conversation design best practices. From product strategy, design, prototyping, testing, to analysis, to serve as a company-wide reference as well as a tried and true recommended process for clients. As part of the framework and working in partnership with AWS, she is currently helping to launch a self-service solution for contact center customer service. Previously, she worked as a choreographer, architectural designer, and a UX designer. Her diverse experiences have brought rich perspectives to her approach to conversation design. So welcome to the stage, Yina.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Very glad to be here and share some of my thoughts about the UX of conversational design. Can all of you see my screen, first of all? Let's see. Can all of you see my screen? Not yet. Uh-oh. Can you see it now? Huh. Whoops. Brianne, would you help me out here?
Yeah, sure. So if you go into the bottom of the screen, you'll see like a little setting wheel. Then there's like a
button. Yeah. I click on that computer icon, but then it asks me which one I want to share. I chose the one that I want to share, and nothing happens.
Let's see. Let me just see if anyone.
Oh, I think I might have to. I have to allow screen recording,
okay.
Which I guess is sharing. I'll be back. Right back.
While everyone's waiting, please put in the chat where you're located, what you're excited to learn about in Inclusive Product Week, what you hope to take away from being at this event. And then Yina will be back in a few minutes.
Okay, sorry about that. It should be shared now. Okay. Okay, again, welcome to attend my talk, the UX of Conversational Design. As the description says, this talk is for UX designers and non-UX designers alike. Anyone who's interested in conversational design, you will find it very helpful. So I'm going to start the talk with this quote from the founder of the TED conference, Richard Warman. "There's nothing else we can do better than we do conversation well. There's no other communication device that provides such subtle and instantaneous feedback, nor permits such a range of evaluation and correctability." So I've asked all of you to fill out a survey earlier. So what's the, let's see, what's the survey result? Did anybody fill out the survey or the polls? Well, I guess nobody did. Basically, I was just asking you guys a couple of questions so that I have a better understanding of my audience before my talk. So if you're a designer, a developer, or any other kind of job type that has anything to do with language or conversational design, this talk will be for you. And I as well want to know what's the general knowledge of the audience in conversational design is. So let's just go ahead and present what I wanted to say today. So first of all, I'm going to introduce what is conversational design first, assuming some of the audience have no idea what I'm talking about. So conversational design is an emerging field with immense potential for new use cases and new users. It's arguably the most user-friendly interface because we're born speaking. Like, we speak our entire lives from when we're kids to when we die, basically. And it comes very natural and intuitive to everyone. So it's arguably the most user-friendly. Sorry, UX designers. And conversational design requires an understanding of how humans communicate. And you might ask, well, of course we know how humans communicate. We talk every day, but then it's not easy to kind of really be cognizant about the various conversational techniques that we use every day in our conversations. And conversational designers need to be cognizant of that. Conversational design uses a protocol of turn taking. So turn taking is basically the kind of base rock of conversational design. I ask a question, you answer the question, we take turns and provide mutual feedbacks. It involves fields such as psychology, sociology, linguistics, and I would argue also architecture, since I have an architecture background as well. And voice designers, usually they do sample dialogues, user flows, and a complete scripting of what the bot says and what the user will say. Basically the turn taking of it, the step-by-step of it. So again, conversational designers come from very diverse backgrounds. So, you know, the audience here might come from very different disciplines. And I just wanted to say conversational designers are from very diverse background. That's what makes the discipline so interesting and rich. I myself come from choreography, architecture, and UX design. Next, I want to just go through quickly the 4 pillars of conversational design, the 4 things that you need to know in order to get into this discipline.
So first of all is prompts. Prompts are what the system responds to the user. So prompts can be in the form of instructions, such as, please tell me your 5-digit zip code, or questions, such as, what would you like, small, medium, or large, right? So it's a prompt to kind of ask the user for an input, basically kind of a indicator that the user is the user's turn to speak, basically. Flows is how the system would interact with the user. So if the user choose small, medium, or large, the system should be taking them into separate flows in order to continue the conversation. Intents are what your users want. So for some people, this term might sound foreign, but intent means what the user wants. So let's say if I just say stop, cancel, then my virtual assistant would route me to the cancel intent or stop intent. If I say yes, place order, please, then I'll be routed to the place order intent, for example. And lastly is the interaction model. Interaction model includes the words and phrases that your users can say to the system in order to activate a certain operation that they want to do. Because humans talk about things in very different ways, even with the same question. I can ask, what's your favorite color? Or I can say, what's the color that you most like? Or I can say, which color do you most like? And so on and so forth. So figuring out all of these words and phrases, what we call utterances in conversational design, is the interaction model that you have to figure out. And next, some applications of conversational design today. Many of you probably has used Siri on your phone or Google Assistant on your phone. Some of you might have the privilege to have an in-car virtual assistant. So BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Ford, Rivian, all these companies has its own in-house team to build their voice assistant. The more common use case may be in-home assistants. So your Alexa, your Google Assistant. Siri also has a home assistant, but obviously it's not very popular. And then Cortana from Microsoft as well. So other voice application use case include appliances. So talking refrigerators, talking video games, talking headphones, talking smartwatch, and smart TV. So it's basically covering a wide range of things in our lives right now, and it will continue to increase. So here I arrive at the core of my talk, which is telling you or discussing the differences between visual and voice interface and comparing them to identify the commonalities. So that the UX designers in this talk, if you're ever interested in going into conversational design, you know how to sell yourself and how to make the connections between your past skills and training to this new discipline. So first of all, design differences. What's the difference between voice and visual? Number one, voice is sequential. Visual design is simultaneous. You can't really say two things at once, right? But you can display two things at once. Voice is more efficient. So if I were to set a reminder, I can just say, Alexa, set a reminder for tomorrow at 7 a.m. to pay my credit card. In visual, I need 4 steps at least to do that same task. I have to click on the calendar, click tomorrow's date, select time, and then add the note, pay my credit card. So which proves voice is a lot more efficient. Voice is transient. Graphic is permanent. Voice is transient, obviously, when have you if you speak something, it's gone, basically. It's gone. It's not written down or recorded anywhere. Voice is dynamic and graphic is more static. And you might want to argue that, oh, but animated graphics are dynamic. But other than animated graphics, voice in general is a lot more dynamic because you can really go into the path of any conversational path. And lastly, cognitive load is very different in voice versus visual. I know that UX designers or visual designers think about cognitive load as well. However, in voice, because it's transient, because it sets once and then it's gone, it's very hard to hold information in general, more than 3 items. So for example, if you present a menu for users to choose, 3 items is basically the limit. And it's recommended that for any prompts that last more than 1 breath, like you have to say it by taking another breath, then it's too long. So all of those design differences result in a bunch of use case differences as well. So because of the design differences, it suggests that some task is better for voice and some tasks are better for visual. So use cases that are more suitable for conversational interface, including a use case with people with disabilities, for example. They can't really handle the phone. Or people who are elderly, very frail old adults, or population who is blind, who just can't use a touch screen or see anything. Everyone during a pandemic in general, I mean, everyone would appreciate not having touch service with potential virus. And then lastly, any task that will benefit from being hands-free. So for example, when you're driving, you don't want to be staring at the screen, you want to be looking at the road. When you're cooking, for example, your hands are covered with grease, you don't want to handle your phone at that moment. So those are use cases that are definitely voice clearly has an advantage. And for visual, there are some use cases that are more suitable for visual. For example, sensitive information. So you don't want a virtual assistant to speak your bank balance out loud in the middle of the street when you want to check your bank balance. And you don't want your voice assistant to tell the whole world what your recent diagnosis from your doctor says, right? And the second use case that are good for visuals is any kind of information that is a long list, very dense information, charts or graphs, and in the case of credit card numbers and email addresses as well, the voice assistant is notoriously bad at recognizing credit card numbers and email addresses. So here, I just wanted to share 2 quotes from some healthcare professionals about the impact of voice assistant in their experience and also in their patient's experience. And this is, so I just gave 2 use cases of healthcare that is not appropriate for voice, but voice can still be used for healthcare, for example, for some not very private tasks, right? So asking information about medication, for example, searching for a hospital nearby, for example, those things are still very useful. So this quote says, the integration of voice-activated technology using a smart speaker as the primary mode of interface with the older adult has overcome many technology use hurdles for even the frailest older adults. And the second quote said, voice assistants overcome challenges for individuals who, due to physical limitations, cannot use a keyboard or touch screen. They also improve patient satisfaction with more natural, engaging experiences. The client is able to use the voice-activated device at their discretion, offering companionship and support on a requested basis. So the last difference I'm going to share is the usability test differences. So in visual, we do wireframes and prototypes. The voice equivalent of that would be a wizard of Oz testing. Wizard of Oz testing basically is a test where a human is pretending to be the bot. So he or she will read out all of the prompts and interact with the user. However, this bot-like human would technically hide behind a curtain like the Wizard of Oz. But that's metaphorically. He or she just cannot be seen by the user to create the illusion of user talking to a voice assistant. And the biggest difference between these two types of testing is the relationship between the presentation layer and the interaction layer. In visual, the presentation layer and the interaction layer can be separated easily. Basically, the UX part is the interaction layer. The UI part would be the presentation layer. However, in voice, it's inseparable. Your voice, your word choice, and your tone is closely connected to what you say. So it's impossible to separate these two layers. And so it's recommended to use a recorded voice for your user testing instead of like what I said, a human behind the curtain. And the second difference is usually for UX testing, it's very often that we ask users to think out loud, to talk as they navigate through the app. In voice, this is impossible. And because obviously it will confuse the voice assistant because whatever they were saying wouldn't be part of the interaction model. So that's the key difference between the two modes of usability testing. Okay, so now I'm gonna share some commonalities between voice and visuals. Essentially, conversational design is a type of user experience design. It uses the same framework. It includes a persona for the product or service that you're designing. You have to figure out what problem is being solved and how to implement the design to solve a particular user pain point. And then you go through the process of research, persona creation, prototyping and testing, user flow creation, and iterative design. Basically, the whole process is extremely similar. And specifically, I would point out 3 elements that are common in between the two modes. First of all, the persona definition. You need to make persona in UX design as well as conversational design, because you need to understand your user. You need to understand your user's pain points and goals and needs, motivations. But in voice, there's one special, unique thing that you also need to capture is this persona's speaking style. Different people from different area have different speaking style. People from New York speak differently. People from California speak differently. People from South Carolina speak differently. So fitting their speaking style or understanding what their speaking style is, what kind of words they're likely to say, what kind of words they're gonna use is important. So again, what language will they use? Who are the people that will use my skill? What will they expect from my skill? Where and when are they most likely to use your skill? They can use it at home. They can use it when driving. They can use it on their phone when they're at the gym. What will they use it for? And how will they interact with the skill? And what's really unique about voice interface design is the system persona, the system personality. And I would have to tell you all that the system personality is probably the single, or one of the most important aspects of your voice design. A lot of people just entering into conversational design use the wrong foundation for personality. They base their personality triads in to their age, gender, race. So, for example, oh, she's a woman who's in her mid-20s. She's Asian and very nice and very introverted, for example. And that's totally a lot that there's a lot of bias in there. And the right foundation for personality instead is to focus on interaction goals. What are the most important factors to the success of the interaction? Level of personalization, how much personality does the first voice assistant need to have? Power dynamics, does the voice assistant have power more, or does the user have power more? And this is completely culturally dependent. Character triads, use the interaction goal to come up with 1 to 4 character triads. So for example, for June, this chef assistant, she only offers details and more information when she's asked. That's how that's one of her character triads. And she remembers the user's ingredients and her favorite recipes, so she can make suitable suggestions, for example. Number 5, tone. Is the assistant formal or casual? Is it an expert or a novice? Is it warm or cold? Or is it excited or calm? And lastly, the key behaviors of this voice assistant. How does the voice assistant behave under key situations that it will encounter? For example, sexual harassment, rude comments. How would the voice assistant respond? The second thing that they have in common is the use of user stories. User stories is a very useful tool in UX to develop empathy for your users, and the same can be used for conversational design. But the one little difference is that for each user story, conversational designers will also attach a sample dialogue to it. So one user story represents one conversational pathway, and that pathway is laid out underneath each user story here. The last commonality is the use of user flows. Just kind of the information architecture, I would argue that is even more important in conversational design, especially nowadays. There are many multi-modal designs, meaning a voice experience with a accompanying screen component. And that's also, I think that was the whole reason I wanted to give this talk, is to so that UX designer can work better with conversational designer and design together, because many useful skills or actions are multimodal, and in this situation you really need to map out how each voice and screen interaction kind of interact with each other. And so you would this is a very simple flow, it's not so complicated, but once you have a big project and you sketch all the flows, it can get very complicated. Finally, I just want to share some resources and communities of conversational design with you all. Communities, there's Women in Voice, Open Voice Network, which concerns about the privacy and ethical issues of voice. Voice Lunch, Voice Talk, Voice Den, VoiceBot.ai. There are many voice events. Just go on Twitter and search for it. And then if you're interested in language and how we communicate, which I think it's actually the foundation of conversational design, there are a few books, How We Talk, talk the science of conversation. You just don't understand men and women in conversation. And that's not what I meant, how conversational style makes or breaks relationships. One of the conversational books that I would highly recommend is Kathy Pearl's Voice User Interfaces. It was a very comprehensive coverage of conversational design process from start to finish. Highly recommend. And if you are, after this talk, if you are interested in some education, interested in learning more about it, I would say start with the Google Conversational Design Library, because it has a lot of free resources for you to learn on your own or get to know more about it. And then if you're ready to invest into a course, I would recommend Digital Assistant Academy, Career Foundry, Udemy, or Conversational Design Institute. Thanks for listening. If anyone has any questions, it's welcome to put it in the chat.
It seems like there, while we wait see if there's any questions that come up. Thank you very much, Yina. I hope you all enjoyed this presentation. While we wait for a few questions, it seems like, yeah, I guess it seems like there's no questions, but thank you again, Yina, for the great presentation. It was a pleasure
Thank
to have
you.
you with us. So this concludes the session. Thank you all for attending. We hope you have learned and enjoyed this presentation, and you can continue the conversation in our session Slack channel. Make sure to join our Slack channel, Inclusive Product Week, and the session is the UX of Conversational Design. Oh, I think we do have a question actually. Steps to design from Brittany. Steps to designing a UX for the different ways people speak. Would you design for all or focus on one?
You mean like designing for different interaction models for people's, what people will say to the voice assistant? Okay. Yeah, well, it depends on who your user is. So first of all, before you design those utterances, you need to find out who your user is. If the voice assistant is used in United States, every state, then you probably don't want to focus too much on a particular speaking style. But if, say, it's a very specific bot for, the southern part of America, for example, then you want to do your research and learn their speaking style, learn what kind of words people will say to your voice assistant. And sometimes is a process of learning as well. So sometimes you just have to put something out there and test it and see how people interact with your voice assistant, so reading user transcript is like part of my day-to-day job. Basically, you're just seeing what people say. And from there, you can learn what terms and word choices you should be optimizing your bot with or your voice assistant with. You're welcome. Any other questions? I believe the Inclusive Product Week would share the slides with or is that right, Brianne?
Yes, we will be sending out the recordings and the presentation slides after the event ends on Thursday.
Yep, great.
That is all the questions. Yeah, thank you again, Yina. This concludes our
Thank you.
session. Thank you all for attending. I hope you enjoyed the rest of the event. Have a good night.
Good night.